All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another edition of our podcast, Thinking Outside the Box. So, we're continuing to look at the landscape of things here, and we're going to notice that things appear to be getting a lot worse. And there is a reason for that. And I think um, we all know the reason, and it's because of the failure of the government and the central banking system known as the Federal Reserve. It's because of their actions or inaction, however you want to say it. And as we continue down this road, it's beginning to be clear to most people as they see the storm clouds gathering that things are not going to end well. And it doesn't take anyone with a doctorate degree in philosophy or psychology to understand what's happening. It's common sense. If you make $5,000 a month, but your living expenses are $10,000 a month, there's no way you're going to be able to make it. You would be considered bankrupt. What is the definition of bankruptcy or insolvency? It's when your liabilities exceed your income, when your liabilities exceed your finances, when your liabilities exceed your income, when your liabilities exceed your investments. You are insolvent. You cannot pay your bills. What happens when you can't even pay the minimum monthly payment on your credit card debt? It's called a default. If you miss a payment on your car note, that's a default payment. That's a default payment. You have now violated the terms of the contract. Yeah, you broke the contract. You violated the terms of the contract. You did not pay. You missed a payment. On the tri-merge mortgage application reports that are run from all three credit bureaus, they have a way of calculating your risk to potential banks. And they look at your 30-day lates, your 60-day lates, your 90-day lates, and then, of course, 120. Obviously, the later the lates, the worse the rating. So we have people that are way beyond 120, 160, 180. They're just they haven't made a payment in 6 months. And that's a default. And that can happen whether we're talking about real estate or if we're talking about car notes, any type of loan, student loan debt. In the United States, and it's also the same in other countries, some other countries, not all countries, but in the US particularly, I'm just talking about the West here for a moment. There are several types of debt that you can incur: medical expenses, medical debt, automobile debt, auto loans, mortgage, okay, or rent, and credit card, and of course, school loans, student loans. So some of these credit lines are revolving credit lines, like a credit card is a revolving debt because you're always going to be charging it, paying it off, charging it, paying it off. It never ends as long as you continue to use the card. And then you have installment loans, like an auto loan or a mortgage. Those are installment loans. Those are not revolving lines of credit, revolving debt. Those are installments because you're paying it off. You're paying off the loan in installments. But what happens when you can no longer make those payments? Well, then your credit worthiness is comes into question according to the bank. They're saying you are now a high risk individual. You no longer fit our vanilla A paper category. You now go into the bin that's next to the trash can called the subprime bin, which means you're going to pay a higher interest rate and you're going to pay higher finance fees and costs as well. Not just rates, but you got to add those points on there, which basically is interest in disguise. So you have to face that. And not only that, but when you fall into that trash bin of subprime, it's like walking around with a scarlet letter on your forehead or having a felony conviction on your record. And yes, for those that don't know, felony convictions do show up on your credit report. So does unpaid child support. Those things show up on your credit report. So when the bank pulls your credit report, it's going to see those things. And they're going to say, okay, let's look at, we have different ways to rate you. And one of the things they're going to run and run the numbers on is your DTI. All right. Delta Tango Indigo. All right. That's a score that's very, very critical. Your debt to income level is critical because it tells them if you're going to be able to pay these bills off or not. And if your debt to income ratios are too high, then they're saying you are virtually or technically knocked out. It's not a knockout, right? Mike Tyson didn't put you on the mat per se and you can't get up your sleep. But we're going to ring the bell and stop the fight because we're going to say you're technically knocked out. You've been beaten so bad as if you had been knocked out. So we say technically you are knocked out. You can no longer defend yourself in the ring. And that's what the debt to income ratio show. You are no longer able to defend yourself in the financial ring with your debt. Your debt has technically knocked you out. Your debt has technically overwhelmed you and overcame you because your debt to income ratios are off, way off, and not in a comfortable zone or level that the banking institution would like to see. And this is becoming problematic across economic lines. Doesn't matter if you're wealthy, doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you are middle class, upper middle class, doesn't matter. Everyone is starting to feel this. So the Fed's ability to spin doctor reality is starting to crumble as people are starting to see beyond the facade and the false promises of their political candidates that are up for reelection. They can promise you the world, but the truth of the matter is they have no way to provide what they are promising because there's no money. And yes, this new economic downturn is starting to bite. And we are starting to see signs of severe pain all over this nation. In fact, unless you are independently wealthy, you are likely feeling pain too. Now, I have known wealthy individuals who operate as if they were peasants. As soon as their income streams start to lessen or drop, even by a little bit, they start selling off assets. Straight up. I've seen it with my own eyes. Oh man, I was making $160,000 a month. Now I've dropped down to $90,000 a month. Okay, I'm selling the Ferrari. I'm selling the house. I'm going to scale down. That's what the wealthy people do. That's what the smart wealthy people do. Poor people will hang on until they lose everything because they're so afraid of changing one iota of their lifestyle. But you see, when the cost of living has risen to extreme oppressive levels, and it's happening at a time when close to two-thirds of the country are already living paycheck to paycheck, watch out. So, as a result of this, now many Americans are having their finances stretched to the breaking point, and millions of them are reaching out for help. Yeah. Did you know that the lines for people waiting for assistance are stretching out? Take Boston's largest food pantry for instance. Did you know recently it stretched the length of two football fields? That's how long the line was. The equivalency of two football fields. That's right. The line outside Boston American's Red Cross food pantry stretched the length of two football fields. The number of people filing into the red brick industrial zone warehouse exceed the worst periods of the pandemic economic crisis. And in April, it had the second highest monthly traffic since it opened in 1982, according to David Andre, the director of the place. In recent months, food stamp benefits have been reduced to pre pandemic levels, and that has made things even more challenging for those near the bottom of the economic food chain. But it isn't just those that are unemployed or that are on government assistance that are hurting. At one food bank in Colorado, military families, teachers, nurses, and even dual income couples are now coming for help. Nathan Springer, a retired Army colonel who is president and chief executive officer of the Colorado Springs based Care and Share Food Bank, said his organization is seeing more requests for groceries from military families, teachers, nurses, and even dual income couples following the cut in assistance. Quote, we've seen young full-time employees who are for the first time facing hard decisions. Are we going to buy food or pay our utility bills? Springer said. We witnessed this kind of suffering in 2008 and 2009, but at that time, food prices were at least relatively stable. Not now. In 2023, today, food prices have already surged to absurd levels. Absurd levels. And they continue to go higher at an alarming pace. In the first quarter alone, global food maker Nestle reported raising prices in North America by 12.4% compared to last year. Unilever raised prices 13.4% globally in its food division, not just in the US. No matter what the Federal Reserve does, there's no way they're going to be able to keep food prices from rising. And that is not going to be a good day for any of us. In a recent tweet, Mike Cernovich summed it up beautifully. I'll give you an example. I took my kids to a casual eating place, ordered meals, saw the amount due, and was pissed. I can afford it. That's not the issue. It's like we're being bled everywhere. If you're struggling, this sentiment is amplified by helplessness, which leads to what? Rage. Can you identify with that? I sure can. Do you remember the days when you could go out to eat and feed an entire family for just $10? McDonald's value meal. That dollar meal is gone. Needless to say, those days are far in the rearview mirror. The days are gone when the average family could afford to purchase a new vehicle every few years. At this point, millions upon millions of Americans keep patching up their old vehicles because vehicles have become just too expensive. Remember not long ago where used car prices were fetching higher prices than new cars? I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. Juan David Ramirez, for example, knows that his 2012 Nissan Juke is on its last legs. But buying a new car in Orlando these days reminds him of car buying in his home country of Colombia, where only the wealthy can afford new cars. Ramirez, 33, and his wife, Angelica, really want a new small SUV with a little space for camping and paddleboarding. But despite good jobs in finance and business contracting, the couple's monthly loan payment will run around $700 for the $35,000 models they are looking at before dealer markups. So they plan to patch up the Nissan, which is already paid off. How many people can afford a $700 a month car note? Actually, a lot of people would argue that if he has a vehicle that is from 2012, he is still living the high life because many Americans are driving around in vehicles that are far older than that. Of course, there were a lot of very unwise people that went out and purchased vehicles that they could not afford over these last couple of years, and now subprime auto loan delinquencies are spiking. The snatch man cometh. The duo pointed out 60 plus day delinquencies hitting 9% in March for borrowers with credit scores of 550 and below when looking at subprime auto loan packages into asset backed securities or bond deals. That's up from a rate of about 7% in March of 2019 before the medical crisis. They also studied evaporated savings of the lowest income borrowers since the mid 2021 peak levels and anticipated a greater share of all U.S. consumers will run out of excess savings in the months to come, leaving them vulnerable to missing payments and, yes, delinquencies. Perhaps more alarming, the 1 month constant default rate for subprime auto bonds or asset backed securities already was nearing 12% on a path towards 16% peak seen in the wake of the global financial crisis. Just like in 2008 and 2009, we're going to see a huge wave of mortgage delinquencies, auto loan delinquencies, and credit card delinquencies in the months ahead. Meanwhile, banks are getting into financial trouble all over the nation, and so they are starting to get really tight with their money. In fact, the Fed's most recent quarterly senior loan officer opinion survey shows that credit crunch for businesses is already here. 42% of banks said they somewhat tightened lending standards for large and mid-sized companies over the past 3 months, according to the Fed's senior loan officer opinion survey, and 45% said they somewhat toughened lending criteria for small firms. And lending standards have also been rapidly getting tougher for consumers. Banks also toughened lending standards for consumers, auto, and credit card loans, according to the survey. Credit card balances have reached a record level, and delinquency rates have edged higher as low and middle income households grapple with high inflation. If this is not an alarm bell, I mean, it used to be a warning, but now it's an alarm. It's one of those air raid alarms. Remember those loud air raid alarms that they would do back in elementary school? Those tests to make sure that it's working. You know those air raid sirens. They're like a million decibels, and they would blow your eardrums out, even if the thing was located on the other side of the football field. Y'all remember what I'm talking about? Well, that's what you're hearing right now. The latest SLOOS report confirms this. According to the report, U.S. banks are expecting to tighten standards across all, not some, but all loan categories throughout the rest of 2023. Banks reported expecting to tighten their standards across all loan categories, the report said. Banks most frequently cited an expected deterioration in the credit quality of their loan portfolios and in customers' collateral values, a reduction in risk tolerance, and concerns about bank funding costs. Bank liquidity positions and deposit outflows as reasons for expecting to tighten lending standards over the rest of 2023. What does this mean? It means that things are going to get substantially worse than they are right now at this moment. So the lines at the food banks are going to get even longer. The most important bank in America is no longer Bank of America, but the food bank. And a lot more people are going to lose their jobs. Don't forget, that's part of the Federal Reserve's policy of fighting inflation. And that is, if they can fire enough Americans, then inflation can come down. Think about it. And more businesses are going to fail because of this. If you remember what 2008 and 2009 were like, that should give you some inkling idea of what's ahead. Yeah. And they have no idea how to solve this disaster. There's nothing they can do from preventing it from happening. It's already happening. The only thing that you can do is the best you can, like learning to make do with less, lowering your lifestyle. That's what the rich do. You think the elite don't? Yes, they do. They're the first people to start shedding. I mean, they're showing you already. What are the big corporations doing? What are they doing? They're firing you. What is that called? That's downsizing. That's what that is. Downsizing. So if big corporations do it, if wealthy people do it, what should you be doing if they're downsizing their lifestyle? So perhaps you can't go out to eat every night like you used to. Okay, fine. You got to stay home and cook your meals. So what? That's not the end of the world. But to some people, it is. For some people, it is the end of the world. You tell them they got to change their lifestyle in any way, shape, or form, that's a wrap. It's the end of the world. The world's coming to an end as far as they're concerned. So this is going to prove the industrialness of individuals now. Because when money is hard to come by, it's going to help those that have a problem with priorities. It's going to help them get some priorities real quick. Real quick. So no more Gucci bags and Chanel bags and Birkin bags. May have to start selling some of those to raise some cash. That's another problem too. Most people are not liquid. And those that are a little liquid, they're not liquid enough. And that's not a good thing. You got $10 million in designer clothes and shoes and purses and watches and jewelry in your house, but you have no money in the bank. You have no money. You have no liquidity. And that's another problem that Americans have, which is unlike anywhere else in the world, in that Americans don't believe in investing their money. They believe in spending money, not investing money. Because the whole economic engine of the United States hinges upon people spending money. Regardless if they're spending money they don't have or not, that's not the issue. The issue is you need to spend money in order to keep the U.S. economy afloat. Straight up. The first thing an American wants to do is go out and spend money. As soon as they get any kind of windfall, they go and they splurge. They splurge. If they hit the lottery, first thing they're going to do, they're going to go to Atlantic City. They're going to go to Vegas. They're going to be gambling, throwing money away. They're going to be buying lavish cars and going on lavish vacations and buying mansions, and so they can stunt on Instagram. Nonsense. Nonsense. It's not what you do the first time you get money. When you get money, you're supposed to stack money, supposed to save money, and then take that savings of money and put it to work for you so that your money can grow. That is what you're supposed to do. I don't care how small a nest egg you have. If you have a nest egg, period, that nest egg is supposed to be working for you. Traditionally, people would put their money in money market accounts in a bank or buy a CD at your bank or what have you, because back in the day, you could get, 8, 9, 10% or whatever. Now you're getting 0%. So that doesn't work anymore. So Americans are being forced now to take on riskier portfolios of investing because the traditional quote unquote safe ways of doing it no longer exist. So you have to now go into the markets. You don't have a choice. But you don't go into it blind. You go into it armed and ready to do battle, because you're not going to be able to do that on your own. You're being forced to go into a world you know nothing about. So you need to be discipled, led, encouraged. That's what you need. And if you don't have the wherewithal to do that, then you find someone who can do it for you. And that's how that goes. That's why I'm on YouTube. That's why I have over 10 years worth of track record and videos right here on YouTube. I haven't taken down not one video. All my stuff is up here. And I do all this to help as many people as I can. I'm trying my best to help as many people as I can. That's why I've been trying to do these podcasts more regularly. So, Lord willing, I will still be able to do these, a couple times a week. But you guys need to get ready, man. Educate yourself. Go to pulsewavetrading.com and see just how easy it can be. I've taken all the guesswork, all the hard stuff out of it and made it easy for you guys. All you have to do, if you can read, and if you have some basic level of comprehension, then you can do this. You can take whatever small amount that you got, and you can go on and you can have your money to start growing for you. All right? You can do it. So be encouraged. All right? Smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.